And our next reporter is Professor Dr. Georgiy Kasianov, Professor, Head of Laboratory of International Memory Studies at Maria Curie-Sklodowska University at Lublin, Poland. And his report will be devoted to mnemonic insights, ontological security, and international relations. So, Professor Kasianov, it's your turn. You have 20 minutes, and then we'll have 10-15 minutes for discussion. Please, if somebody has questions, send them to me or to Noy Adamov.
I'm trying to get the idea can you see me and can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. I see you. I listen to you. Everything's okay with the sound.
Okay, thank you. So I just would like to share some thoughts about the kind of new approaches to the politics of memory and international relations, or politics of memory and international politics of memory, and concepts like mnemonic security and securitization of memory and weaponization of memory. I think, well, I would put into the center of all this deliberations the concept of mnemonic anxiety, and I would start with the kind of definition of what mnemonic anxiety is. It's a feeling of concern, worry, and a sense of threat to the foundations of the identity of the collective self from capital S. In this case, collective memory. Mnemonic anxiety may emerge naturally as a immediate reaction to oppression, aggression, or abuse, and deliberately cultivated and promoted by the political, cultural, and social agents. And so I would say that this approach was already more or less elaborated by Maria Marxo, but she used the term mnemonic status anxiety. This is exactly about international relations, about representing someone at some collective self or some state or some community at international arena. And she places this into the context of competitive democracy in international relations. So I think that it's quite promising field of research, quite promising direction, and I would like to elaborate it probably in more details, and then to give a couple of concrete examples of what mnemonic anxiety is and how it works, and how it affects international relations. I think that's, well, the first we should talk about is that about the generations and beneficiaries of mnemonic anxiety. Typically, they are cultural and political elites and discourse mongers of various kinds. So they also responsible for articulating mnemonic anxiety, its instrumentalization, and its utilitarian use for cultural, political, and social mobilization. However, the number of actors recently expanded, and we should include here also non-governmental entities, social media communities, and well, memory activists as such. Some memory activists might have audiences which can reach thousands or dozens of thousands of listeners or viewers. So that's, well, these people are also important in this case. So the characteristic feature of mnemonic anxiety is that its generators, even if they use it as a tool of deception, can themselves fall under the influence of discourses created by them, by themselves, and perceive artificially created anxiety as a self-evident. So the dynamic here is quite simple from one point of view, but at the same time, sometimes it's hard to discover how it developed. And to do this, to follow this, you have to deconstruct discourse and to deconstruct not only discourse itself, but also deconstruct intentions and well, evident plans of generators of mnemonic anxiety. Probably the most striking example is the mnemonic preoccupation of Russian political and cultural elites, which led to obvious self-deception and mnemonic self-deception and weaponization of the past. First securitization and then weaponization. Mnemonic anxiety stems from specific presentist perceptions and understanding of the past. So within this perception, the imagined past is perceived not just as a policy tool, which is obvious, and the neo-realist and constructivist approaches presuppose this, but also as a fundamental of national identity and a perpetual transcendent phenomenon. Constructed past in this case is not just a political instrument, but also an integral part of outlook, belief, and system of values. This is why it is so important and so intimate to actions and reactions. So mnemonic anxiety emerges as a response to a perceived threat to this worldview and value system, and is therefore closely related to the perceptions of safety. Accordingly, it prompts action to prevent or eliminate the threat. Once again, the threat can be real or can be imagined, can be perceived or conceived, whatever. In terms of goal settings, these actions related to the reaction to mnemonic anxiety might be constructive, like, for instance, attempts to build a common European historical identity based on shared values and common historical experience, what we observed in the European Union during the probably last 2 or 2.5 decades. Or they can be destructive when it comes to the struggle for dominance. Generally, this destructive mode of response to mnemonic anxiety, generally it concerns mostly bilateral relations. And then if you would look at the field of mnemopolitics, let's say from the middle of the 2000s, exactly when the European Union expanded, and to, let's say, beginning of Russian-Ukrainian war in 2014. That was a period of mnemonic wars, and one of these wars turned into real war. And one of the components which led to escalation of mnemopolitics, and then turning the mnemopolitics into the integral element of the politics of aggression and annexation, etc., etc. So that was exactly this time, and that was exactly again one Ukrainian-Russian case. I also would propose some kind of typology of types of securitization of collective memory caused by the mnemonic anxiety. One type is reactive, which aimed at combating existing threats, actual or imagined. And this is then can be applied to many cases, including the period which I mentioned before, period of active mnemonic wars. For instance, when Russia fought for mnemonic space and for domination in mnemonic space with Baltic states, with Ukraine, with Poland, and within the former Soviet Union with some other countries. And it can be the second part of a second type of reaction might be preventive, which focuses on the introduction of discourses, rules, regulations, and practices that supposedly may block perceived threats. Definitely, preventive type of this securitization might be considered in the context of mnemonic laws, and particularly those mnemonic laws which not just establish rules and regulations, but also establish certain types of liability for violating these rules and regulations. For instance, in Russia, it is a Yarovaya law and some other laws which amended it. And in Ukraine, for instance, it is one of memory laws passed in 2015, which introduced the amendments to Criminal Code of Ukraine and criminalized certain kinds of social behavior related to collective memory. So, and third type is proactive, that forms the desired culture and political environment, ensuring ontological security in the present and in the future, and even aims to establish a new form of collective historical identity. So, of course, these three types of securitization of collective memory, of course, they are interconnected, entangled, and I just divided them on well, three groups just for the purpose of analysis. In practice, they coexist. They exist within each other, and then they interact very closely and very intensively. So, going to certain concrete things, concrete examples. Well, of course, the most obvious example is Russian-Ukrainian relations in the field of politics of memory, where we see the highest level of securitization of historical identity and historical memory. And what is interesting here in this case is that I think that, well, this is my opinion at this moment, of my research, is that in the Russian case, as I already mentioned, it's a good deal of self-deception here, exactly on this dynamic which I described earlier, that the external threat to national identity, to Russian national identity, perceived and conceived as a ontological threat, as an existential threat. And it started exactly in 2005 when Baltic states declined the participation in the victory celebrations in 2005, and then it reached its highest point in 2019, 2020, when the European Union, the European Parliament, passed the resolution about the responsibility for the beginning of the Second World War, which in fact then turned into open war between memory war between Russia and the European Union. And if we'll go to Ukrainian-Russian relations, to Russian-Ukrainian relations, so in this case, I would jump to Ukrainian case. Definitely, Russia's intervention into Ukrainian internal memory politics definitely caused a very radical reaction from Ukrainian side. Particularly, for instance, it started with the the promotion of Holodomor's genocide and international arena, so where Russia effectively blocked all attempts of Ukrainian attempts to pass a resolution at international bodies characterizing the Holodomor as a genocide of Ukrainians. And then you can see that after February 22, there was a kind of parade of recognition of Holodomor's genocide at international body and by majority of the parliaments of the countries which were definitely previously reluctant to do so. So that's probably the most obvious outcome in this case, but also very important and probably the core element of existential and mnemonic anxiety. Mnemonic anxiety in this case is a part of ontological anxiety, is that Russian political cultural elite in their statements just, well, obviously did not and do not recognize Ukrainians as a separate sovereign entity. And respectively, to Ukrainians, it definitely meant that Russian political and cultural elites do not recognize their right to existence. Of course, it can be explained and just explained by various actors and analytics, well, explained through historical legacy, through the idea of kind of antagonization of memory narratives by both countries, etc., etc. But generally, in the core, in the basis, it is exactly about non-recognition of Ukrainians as a historical entity, which definitely poses existential threat to national identity, to Ukraine's national identity. So this is the most extreme part, the most extreme case. Another case is a politics of European Union in the field of politics of memory, when, for instance, starting from the end of 90s and through 2 decades of 2000s, when European Union tried to introduce some kind of inclusive forms of historical identity, all European historical identity. I can give you 2 cases. One is an idea of common European history, and which resulted in several projects like Common European History textbook or House of European History, the big museum in Brussels. And of course, Common European Memory, Holocaust Memory, including formal introduction of formal commemoration of Holocaust and different Holocaust education initiatives, etc., etc. So in this case, the mnemonic anxiety was related to well, the slogan "Never again." So we just see that here is the main preoccupation is to avoid any kind of radicalization of discourses and radicalization to avoid radicalization of conflicts between different national constitutives of the European Union. So, well, I would like to finalize this short report by saying that probably it might be worth to consider mnemonic anxiety as a very important element of international relations, and not just in Europe, globally. when I observe the literature on memory conflicts over the globe, I see that it is one of the most important integral components of kind of deterioration of the previous world order, and unfortunately, historians do something to invest into this. So let's study it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Georgiy, for your presentation and for promoting a new approach, theoretical approach towards this topic. Actually, this day we have just discussed the absence of common theoretical frameworks for memory studies and common methodology, and actually your report contributes to this discussion. So, if there are any questions, please write them to me or to Noy Adamov. And I have a question for my own. I listened to your report carefully, especially when you spoke about Russian case. Actually, securitization and of memory I mentioned when I was there. So, but I have a basic question about it. Securitization is not a thing, it's quite a discourse to bring about a militarized vision of a particular event or outline the importance, and to use such discourse in manipulative ways in order to promote specific policy. Usually it never connects directly to the object of securitization, but it's more about elites, elite struggles, budgets, and so on. So it's very hard to argue with the notion that there are mnemonic conflicts, but the metaphor of war, it's too obliged. It brings about too much meanings to what we've been seeing when we speak about particular conflicts or discussions, contradictions. I mean that it's impossible to speak about history in one way, and conflicts, especially mnemonic conflicts, it's quite obvious and generally think it's quite normal. It's normal to see histories in different ways. But when we say that some conflicts are worse, it's a metaphor. We think about a metaphor. And if there are some people who share this metaphor, metaphor as reality, they do really act in such conflicts as warriors. They take these conflicts as a war, and they elaborate their strategies as a war, and in this way we can outline different ways of waging this war and of promoting this historical anxiety. But still, what is the ontology? I mean that how it's possible to differentiate between discourse and the real perception of history as something important to defend. Moreover, I can say that when I worked in Russian Society for Military History up to the beginning of the full-scale aggression, I knew nobody among Russian elites who do really think that there were memorial wars, or somebody tries to attack Russian history. Medinsky, no, it's a game. For him, it's a game to play in history. Usually they deliberately take some positions in Europe on history, and they say, look, they're trying to destroy our memory. But it's a media strategy. It's a lie, it's manipulation, but it's not the discourse of real anxiety on history. So how it's possible for us as specialists, as scientists, how to differentiate between discourse, manipulated discourse, and real anxiety? Because in the case of Ukraine, of course, nowadays it's quite real, I suppose, to think that we are attacked. Of course, Ukrainians are attacked, and to securitize the history. The same is about Holocaust. Actually, it was quite an obvious devastating war, devastating genocide. And never again, it was not only about securitization discourse. It was about what was reality. Nobody wants to suffer a new war. But when Russian elites say that our memory of the Second World War, the Great Patriotic War, is attacked, and we should defend it, we don't see the same situation. It's more about manipulation.
Well, I would say that discourse is reality. It's well, it's if you say something, it means that it's already exists, even if it's just a well, say it or transfer it into pixels and bytes, whatever. It is already reality. This discourse is not some kind of falsified. It just if you ask about the difference between real anxiety and imagined anxiety, or deliberately produced anxiety, that definitely the only procedure for this is to deconstruction of the discourse and the analysis of the interest of actors, etc., etc. But my central point about mnemonic anxiety is exactly about that. It is intimately connected, related to ontological security, and it is generally accepted in the literature since probably 2000s that in some cases it is possible that people would prefer ontological anxiety, so that then will be asked to choose between ontological security and physical security. Sometimes they might prefer ontological security on the expense of physical security. So when people go to the front to put their lives for some kind of idea, it's exactly about ontological security, not about physical security. They can quit their physical security because they want to fight for some kind of idea. So, and the same applies to the field of international relations. Ukraine, at certain point with Ukrainian Russian relations, Ukrainian elites decided to defend ontological security, existential security, in terms of identity security on the expense of physical security. So it is very interconnected, entangled, and in fact, the line between manipulation and the state, when somebody, for instance, in Russian case, yes, when definitely at certain point there was manipulation about the threat from the West to Russian identity, but historical identity. But at certain point, and this is exactly about the dynamics, when people create some kind of discourse. I mentioned this in my report. When people create some certain group of interest, create some discourse for purely instrumentalist purposes, then when this discourse is repeated and intimated by many people, including creators of this discourse, creators of this discourse can fell under the influence of discourse created by themselves. So they could, it becomes a kind of intrinsic component of their identity. and they might not even admit it, but it is the case when you observe it from outside. It's definitely and obviously that the case when something which was created for manipulation and instrumentalization becomes a part of internalized by creators and become part of their belief.
Yes, thank you. Yes, actually, it's quite a very big discussion about reality, what reality is. I mean, to discuss it's a reality, of course. Standard discourses, different discourses, I like this linguistic approach, but the reality of discourse, it's a raw reality. I mean that if I say you something to the set, of course, it exists in a discourse reality, but it functions in social world in a different way, like other discourses, and it's quite a point how to outline different not meanings but significance brought about through historical events. Nowadays, I'm trying to compare what happens with the public history in Russia, Ukraine, to what's happening here in Israel. And I don't see that people feel the same anxiety about history, about his security. Yes, after 7th October, the feeling that we are not secure here, that we are not protected, and if we just fail to protect it, that's quite a common feeling in Israel society, but nobody speaks about history and secretization of it. And it's quite a point in what way, if we see something that looks like secretization of history or historical anxiety, I do really agree that this exists. But my point is about how to analyze it to understand the reality of it, the reality, the status of significance in this way. That it's really, yes, I met people who do really think that Western elites try to manipulate history and to deprive Russians of history. They do really believe in this, but usually these people don't govern Russians. People in government much more pragmatic, but they do really use. And actually, we have one question. One question is it's about AI chatbots that there was a report that some chatbots are purposely infected with Russian disinformation, and nowadays people use chatbots, especially to get information about history, and in what way such instrumentalization of artificial intelligence, AI, complicate mnemonic anxiety. So it's a question about how to connect chatbots, international intelligence, and the way of manipulation of them to your topic. Does it brings anything about it? So this is the question.
Well, I know I have no idea. It's very new to me, so I know that it is used, and I know how it's used sometimes. And I myself was a object of bot attacks, but I don't know how to deal with this. It's rather the question to security specialists and to those who knows something about artificial intelligence. I'm absolutely non-specialist in this case, so I cannot respond this question.
Yes, thank you. And if we don't have any questions, actually, well, we lack of the time. thank you once again to Professor Kasianov, to his